So welcome to Tuesdays at 2. It's Melinda here with the Coaches Console, and today's topic, we're going to be looking at the specific feature in your console system called the client log. Most of the time, majority of the time, this feature is used with your clients, hence the name client log. But today we're going to cover several different ways you can use this. We're going to look at different ways that you can prompt your clients in between the sessions, because one of the things that we teach here at Coaches Console is what we call exquisite client support. Like, it's not just enough to show up for the appointment with your client. That's a good level of support. That's a hobbyist approach to things. It's just you have your call, you show up for the appointment, and you don't hear or interact or talk with them until the next session. Sometimes that happens, and we like to promote exquisite client support where you're making yourself available without giving too much more of your time in between those sessions. And the client log feature is a great way to do that. So we're going to look at 3 ways that you can use that to prompt your clients in between those sessions. We're going to talk about how to train your clients to use this feature, because some clients are going to use it, some clients aren't when they're coaching and working with you. So we're going to talk about that as well. And then I'm going to give you a tip that you can use, how you can use this feature with even prospects or hot leads, people that have not yet signed up to be a client, and how you can use this feature in that way as well. So that's what we're going to cover today. So this is really all about keeping our prospects engaged and keeping our clients engaged and providing support for them. So the feature that I'm talking about is what we call the client log. And I'm going to click on the contacts. Over here on the left, you'll see the main contacts. And with this contacts module, for every one of our contacts, whether they're an active client, an inactive client, it might be a prospect, any one of our contacts, and we're just going to use Helen Ramsey as we always do in these trainings, any one of these contacts, they're all going to have a client log file, which you'll see right here. And with this client log, the intention of this is a way for you and your client to interact with each other. So you don't have to use email, because email is unreliable, it's not dependable, it's certainly not confidential and secure, and a lot of times it may not reach the person, it might get lost in, before I have my morning tea, I already have hundreds of emails in my inbox, so that gets lost and everything. And so having this client log element to offer your clients as a way to interact with you, it does several things. Number one, it keeps you and your clients organized in your communication with each other, so you're not using emails to go back and forth with anyone. It also allows you and your clients to be organized. So your client, at any time when they log into your private client website, they have the whole history of the interaction with you inside the client log. And you can see here, now I'm behind the scenes looking at this as the coach, but here's the log entries with this particular client. And you can see, I can scroll down and it lists it by date, what those entries were. I can see what entries I posted. I can see what entries the client posted, any attachments or links they send. And so I can go through here, and I'm not having to scroll through my inbox or different folders in my inbox. It's all organized under all of the data and information related to this client, because I'm in the client files or the contact files for this person. And the same is true with the client. When the client logs in, and let me just log in as the client really quickly. I'm going to click this shortcut right here, the login as Helen. I'm going to log in as this client. When the client logs into your private client website, right, they're greeted by the dashboard, and they have the ability to enter a client log entry to you and also review the client log entries that you've made back and forth. And so you'll see the My Logs menu, and they can make an entry, or they'll see the log archive, and they can, you can scroll back and they can look at log entries between a certain date and a certain time frame, and they too can scroll and they can see what you wrote, what they wrote themselves, anything you shared with them. And so it organizes them as clients. So it keeps them organized, it keeps you organized. And the more organized you and your clients can be, the more powerfully you can serve them and support them where they are, and the better results your clients get. So I like to keep everything organized in this client log. And this feature is designed to use with your clients in between the coaching sessions, whether you meet with somebody once a month or every other week or every week or whatever it is, sporadic schedule. This feature is designed for an organized, secure way for your clients to interact with you. Okay, so let's go talk about several different ways. I'm going to go back to being logged into our console system, and now I'm the business owner, I'm the coach, and I'm logged into my console system. I'm looking under my contacts, and I'm looking at a particular client, and I'm on the client log. And a client log entry, just to recap really quickly, it's just a way where you can enter messages here. You can format it if you need to. You can include hyperlinks. So if you need to include, if you found a really cool article on somebody else's blog that you're part of that's relevant to your client, you might include a link to that person's blog and say, hey, go check this out. This pertains to what we were coaching around. You can include graphics and images. You can include videos if there's a video that you want to share with the client. So you can include links, images, videos. You can include content. You can even attach documents. So a lot of times, like with us, we're reviewing a lot of our clients' initial marketing material or free gifts or their Pain Island, Pleasure Island descriptions, the way their packages are put together. And so our clients will send us information and we'll review it, and we can attach documents and share with them as well. So the 3 ways that you can prompt your clients in between, because in the beginning when somebody first becomes a client, they're not used to this. They're not used to how to interact with you, and so you have to help educate them and train them on how to make the most of this feature. And there's 3 recommendations that we have. There is a simple way of sharing an article, right? It either can be written or it can be a link to a blog or another article, right? And so if you are working with somebody and they're stuck on topic XYZ, there might be somebody in your network that does articles and blog posts about that. And you can share that and say, hey, check out this because it is specific to what we were talking about. So you can share an article. Another thing that you can prompt them with is to share a resource. And that can be a book. It can be a movie. One of my favorites is, and what my clients love is when I share apps with them or songs. They love knowing what songs I listen to and what books I read and what apps I use, right? And so if I find apps to be helpful in my day-to-day world, most likely my clients are going to, because they want what I have. I've been down that road, I've been down that journey, and I'm coaching them along that path, and they want that experience. And so they love when I share those resources. And you know, one of the things that we talk about in boot camp is sharing resources on a private page in our private client website where we list books, movies, apps, songs, articles, research, material like that. And in the client log, you can pull those resources off your web page and just spotlight them here for your clients. So sharing a resource is another great way to prompt them to really learn how this feature works and making use of this. So you can share an article, you can share another type of resource, and you can also, a third way is, this one takes a little more involvement, a little more brain power, so I don't use this one as much because it requires too much thinking on my part sometimes, not all the time, but I like things to be quick and simple to keep my clients engaged. Because the longer it takes me, the longer it's going to take me to do this, and the longer it's going to take before my client realizes it. So I like to keep it simple and quick. But a third thing that you can do is follow-up coaching questions. There might be another question that came to you after the coaching session, and you can just put that coaching question in here for them to ponder or journal or write about or respond to you with in between the coaching sessions. So those are 3 ways that you can prompt clients to to begin to use this until they get used to it, and then they'll start making their own entries. They'll start making their own prompts. And a lot of you, for those of you that have been in our boot camp, you used this feature with our boot camp coaches, and you guys quickly got the hang of it. So we just, in the initial time frame, that's one of the takeaways I want you to have is when you're first starting to work with a client in the first 2 to 3 weeks, because remember, it takes about 3 weeks, 21 days to create a new habit. And you have to repeat yourself multiple times for people to learn a new process. And the client log is just that. You've got to educate them on how to use it. One of the things that I want to share with you when it comes to training and educating our clients to use this, one of the practices that I have is I include this resource in my coaching agreement. So before my client ever says yes, I'm having that enrollment conversation with them. And I've pulled out my online coaching agreement. I've got my laptop or my tablet open, or I've had them open it on their computer if we're on Skype or Zoom. And I will have them, as we're going through the coaching agreement, I list in my coaching agreement the resources that are available to them that's going to help them accomplish the results that they want to accomplish. Because it's more than just the coaching. They get so much more of me. And the interaction in between sessions is one of those things. So I start by educating them right from the coaching agreement. I tell them that this is a resource and a tool that they'll have access to. And then my new client autoresponders. That's one of my new client autoresponders, is I share the resources available to them to support them in achieving their desired outcome. And I will include things like the call strategy form, the client log, the post-session recap form, and I will include those elements. And this client log is one of those components that I do. So that's the second time. As soon as they get started with me, they're going to receive this autoresponder, and it's basically almost verbatim repeating what I had in my coaching agreement. I just copy the language and I paste it into my new client autoresponder, and I remind them again. And then when we have our first coaching session, at the very end of my first coaching sessions, actually about the first 3 coaching sessions I have with them, I do this. At the end of every session, I always wrap up with something like this. Remember, Susie, you can interact with me in between the sessions. And to do that, when you log into my private client website, you'll see the client log. And you can make an entry there. You can ask me questions if you get stuck, if you have a celebration, if there's something you want me to review. You can post it there. And to the degree that you show up there, I will also show up in response. If you never use it, I probably won't use it either. But if you show up there, I will too. And so I make it their responsibility. And I remind them at the end of every coaching session before we hang up that they have this feature. And I do that for about the first 3 sessions. And so now it's like, oh yeah, the client log. Oh yeah, the client log. Oh right, the client log. And now they're getting the hang of it. So that's how I educate them to use it in the coaching agreement, the new client autoresponder to onboard them, and at the end of the first 3 coaching sessions before I hang up. And then I prompt them in the early stages of working together, where I might share an article, and it may even be an article I wrote. It doesn't have to come from another source. Maybe I wrote a newsletter article 14 months ago and it pertains, and I might pull it out and say, hey, this was a newsletter article I did, go check it out. And then another week I might share a resource, one of my favorite apps or something like that on my phone, things like that. And so then that will help prompt them to use it. And then I leave it up to them. And that is the one thing I say in the enrollment conversation and at the beginning of coaching is this phrase exactly. To the degree that you use this, I will respond in like. Some of my clients, they use it every day when I work with them. And if they do, and I tell them, I will respond to you within 24 hours. So they know they're going to get a response to me sometime within 24 hours. And if I have a client that uses it every day, I'll respond every day. If I have a client that uses it here and there sporadic, I'll respond sporadic. If I have a client that after those first 3 times and after those first few promptings, they never use it, I do not go in there anymore and use it, because ultimately it's the client's responsibility. I'm not there to be their crutch. I'm not there to do it for them. I'm there to educate them and make it available. And if they use it, great. If they don't, fine. And then there are some people who, and I learned this when I was working with small business owners and executives, senior executives. They are busy people, and to have one more to do where I would require them to fill out the client log, it was just overwhelmed for them. They were already overwhelmed. It's like, look, if you're too busy, I get it. We'll just meet on the coaching session if that works for you. So I wouldn't force it, but I would educate them. Yeah. Susie just made a remark, and this is, I was getting ready to say this, so thank you for this cue, and it's brilliant. Susie says, I get them to use it for their homework as well. And that's another great way at the end of the coaching session, if they've committed to providing you with information or giving you a document or completing an exercise, then using the client log to do that is also a great way to keep everything about this client organized and to get them to use it. Yeah. Svea asked a question. Svea says, is it possible to have a heading or subject line that shows up when I send an email notification to a client? I'm aware that I use this to be secure, so often I don't include the content in the email notification, but I would like the client to see right away what the client log is about, i.e. whether urgent to reply or whether it can be read later. You know, Svea, that's a great suggestion. It's actually in our suggestion box, and we're looking at it right now. It's simply the general subject line of oh, I forget what it says exactly, but it's something to the effect of your coach has made a post in the client log, and in the body of that notification that the client receives is a link for them to click, log into your private website, and then they see the client log. And speaking of that, I want to show you a few options. So whenever you create a client log to the client, you have the ability to show the log to the client. And what this option means is when you check mark this, when the client logs into your private client website, whatever you have typed in the body of this client log, they'll see it in your private client website. Now you notice that when I check marked this, two more options appeared. You can send an email notification to the client that says, hey, your coach just posted something in the client log, it's ready for you to review. I highly recommend that if you want a client to look at this, you absolutely check mark this option so that your client's prompted and they know to log in, or the next time they log in, they'll see it. It's this last option that I want to talk about, the include log note in the email. So what that means is whatever you type in the body of the client log, when your client receives that email notification that says, hey, your coach just posted a log entry, this content will also be in that notification. Now, as a coach, you want to be very mindful of your clients. And here's why. One of the coaches that was in boot camp, I think it was about 2, maybe 3 years ago, his specialty and his ideal client was helping people transition out of the career they hate into the career that they love. And he was great at helping them find a new job, find a new career, and helping them leave their old career. Now, a lot of these people would use their work email address. Why? I have no idea. But they did. And a lot of his clients would use their work email address in their existing job that they hate, that they're trying to leave. And can you imagine if that coach sent the email notification and included the log note of the details about how to leave your current job, and it landed in their work email, and that person's assistant caught wind of it? Not so good, right? So in that particular situation, that coach never included the log note in the email, just in case, because they did not know who was looking or who had access to that client's email, right? So be very, very mindful of who's receiving it and is it secure. And sometimes I ask my client if I'm not sure. Now, a lot of times, like I coach entrepreneurs. They work out of their home. They're solo entrepreneurs. It's them, it's their business. There's not anybody else around. And so 99% of the time, my clients have no problem, and they prefer for all the content to be included in the log note. Because nobody's around, they don't have an assistant yet, they're not working with anybody, nobody's reading their email, so it's all good. It's all, they feel secure and they feel the confidentiality. But if you're working with somebody on a delicate matter, like relationship coaching, that's another one. If you work with women in relationships and she's talking to you about her husband and how things are miserable and they're trying to repair their life, don't include the log note in the email. You have no idea if that husband is going to see things. That's why you got to be mindful. That's why we've made it an option that you can turn on or turn off, depending on your client, right? You get me, Susie's like, oops. Yeah, it could be pretty tricky. So just be mindful as a coach and make sure you know what you're doing in regards to that. Svea says, I find that when I include the log note in the email, it invites the client to hit reply. It's a default response. Do you have a practical way to manage this quickly and simply? Yeah, and let me speak to that, because when this, when I, like Svea says, I include the log note and here it is. And so when I scroll down and I click save, that email notification goes to that client. And a lot of times a knee-jerk reaction is just to click reply. Instead of clicking the link inside the body of the email that takes them to your private client website where they can log in and read the content and respond in the client log, some people will just click reply. When they click that reply button in that email notification, it's an email back to you in your inbox. It's not in the client log. It's not in your console. It's a reply back to your inbox. So that can be a message that you include, like you could include a just kind of a default message that says, here's to your success, Melinda. P.S. Remember to click the link and post your response in the client log itself to keep things confidential, right? And so this is the benefit to keep things confidential. That's important to the client. So you can just remind them at the end of every log post. That's one way you can do it. And Svea, the other thing that we are working on is a feature. So when they click reply, it doesn't go to your inbox. It posts automatically to the client log. So we're working also on taking care of that for you. So even if people do ignore everything you tell them, they don't read your PS, and they still click reply, it'll end up in the client log. So that is, I don't have a release date for that enhancement to that feature just yet, but we are working on it as well. And in the meantime, you can do that PS reminder kind of thing, okay? Let's see, Susie says, is there a way of having that confidential response message as a default, like the bottom of the emails? Right now, not yet, and that's something we're working on, and we're hoping that by clicking that, by doing that reply feature that automatically posts it to the client log, it'll help with that significantly, okay? Svea says, I copy and paste into a client log and then reply with a reminder. And she says, woohoo, so glad to hear this will be sorted out as it's such a human dilemma. Yeah, it's just a knee-jerk reaction. We all do it, and so we're going to put something in place to help redirect that. Yeah. So that's how the client log works. Those are the 3 ways to prompt them and how to train them. In addition, before we open this up to other Q&A or just general Q&A, whether it's about today's topic, because we always do that in the second half of the training, we'll open it to just a general Q&A, whatever questions you have about your system. The last thing that I want to share about this particular topic of the client log is that while we created this for clients to interact in between sessions, it's also a great thing to use with prospects. So if you have a prospect or a hot lead, somebody that's they booked a sample session with you maybe, or they're really curious and they're really interested, maybe you met them at a networking event and they're asking a lot of great questions, their curiosity is pretty strong, they haven't said that they're ready to sign up, but you know they're a little warmer lead than just some random Jane Doe who signed up for your free gift. You don't know. Right? So another great way that you can do this, and let me just go to prospects. So let's just say, we'll just pick Alan. We don't need to save that, so we can just click OK. So here's our prospect, Alan Preston. And let's say that we were at a networking function. I know this used to happen when I first started my coaching business. I would go to a lot of local chamber events. I went to a lot of networking. I was in BNI and did weekly networking events. And so I was always talking to potential prospects and or referrals, people that sent me a referral. So let me use the scenario of, let's say that Alan Preston was a referral. And let's say that somebody in the BNI networking group that I was in said, you know, I've got this friend. He could really use your services. I've talked to him about what you do. He's interested. He'd like to hear from you. And here's what I know about him. And your referral source in your networking group proceeds to share with you why they believe he's a great fit for you. So you're like, oh, this is really good insight. And you want to collect this information somewhere so that you have it on file for Alan. But Alan doesn't need to know this. He doesn't need to see this. This is just for your eyes only. So the client log entry is a way that you can do this. You can click on Add Log Entry, right? And so info and insights, well, hang on, that my referral source provided. And maybe they talk about some of the greatest challenges that Alan's been dealing with, right? Whatever those, their observations, why they think he's a good fit. Maybe they give insight into what he's been trying to accomplish and hasn't been able yet to accomplish on his own, and he's really getting to the end of his rope, and whatever. Your referral source is going to have some insight into why they believe that's a good referral for you. And whatever they share, you can collect that here into the client log. Now, in this kind of scenario, this is not an interaction between you and Alan. This is just a place to collect your notes. So sometimes insights and information. I might lead with this so that it's crystal clear when I see this. This is my my behind the scenes insight and information. So it's really clear what I'm looking at here, right? And then I enter what this referral source shares with me. Now, because I don't want Alan to necessarily see this, I do not select this option. Because when I select this option, what happens? When Alan becomes a client and he logs in, he'll see whatever I've typed, my personal notes, my remarks, my observations that I've collected, right? So I don't want him to see that. So I do not check this. I leave this open because this is just for my information only. And I click Save. And now it's saved, so anytime I come back to Alan's file, I can see the insight and the information. I might list the referral's name as the resource where I'm getting this information from and things like that. So that's a great way to use this with prospects or hot leads so that you can build the relationship and understand where that prospect, where that hot lead is in their particular life at this particular time. So that's one great way to use it. Another great way to use it is, you know, as you start doing your coaching business and you have those sample sessions and those enrollment conversations, you're going to collect information. And so maybe we've had an enrollment conversation with Alan. And, you know, as you start to master your enrollment conversations, you'll be closing and converting about half of those, maybe more, up to 80%, depending on how you master those. But you'll be converting a good percentage of those enrollment conversations into becoming clients. But there's still about half of them that are not ready to say yes. And so it's important to collect information, because it may not be, with a lot of prospects, what I have found is that it's not a hell no, I'm never going to do this. Usually it's a no, not right now. And when you've had an effective enrollment conversation with them and you've overcome their objections and you've really gotten to the legitimate reason why they're just not able to take that step for themselves, it's like, okay, that's fine. Your timing's perfect. I'm here. The door's open. We'll connect when we need to. And until then, I'm going to have information about you so that I can continue to build that relationship. And I will include my enrollment conversation notes here. insights, information, things they shared with me, struggles they're having, things they're sick and tired of, why they think coaching might be right for them. Like that information and those notes from that enrollment conversation, I'm going to include that here. Again, they don't need to see that. That's just for my eyes only. So I'm going to not check this. I'm going to leave this option open, and I'm going to save this. I'm going to keep this on file, right? And then depending on, you know, he might share his struggles. He might share obstacles that have kept him from reaching his desired goals. Whatever. He's going to share some information, and you're going to learn why it's not a yes right now. And then what I have found is that when I can keep my attention on my really hot prospects, on my hot leads, when I can keep my attention on them, I start noticing things in my world. I will see a book on my shelf, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just talking with Alan about that in the enrollment conversation. If Alan had his hands on this book, it might give him the insight to take the step into coaching. Or I might come across an article in a newspaper, or a movie might make me think of something, and I can send that to a prospect and say, hey, Alan, you know, I know you're not a yes, and I totally get that. I just wanted you to know I came across this resource. I thought you might enjoy it. And now I can continue to nurture that relationship, no strings attached. I'm helping and supporting him. And if he's a yes, great. If he's a no, fine. I'm leaving him better than I found him. And so it's important to collect that information, and a client log is a great way to do that. Again, because this is a prospect and it's from an enrollment conversation, the prospect doesn't need to see these notes. When they become a client, they don't need to see this. So I leave that unchecked, and I simply click save. And when I go back to my notes about that person, I can see and I can check in on that. And that's another great way to do follow-up marketing. And this is a really powerful follow-up marketing strategy. For every enrollment conversation you have that's a no, my recommendation and my best practice that I want to share with you is and that's why we have hot leads, actually. These are the hot leads. These are the enrollment conversations that are not a yes yet, right? And for everybody that's a hot lead in your contact list, to enter all the notes you know about them in the client log, and once a week, go through all of your hot leads, go through the log entries for your hot leads, and locate a resource, an article, a blog post, a movie, an app, a book, a fun resource. It might be a magical deck of cards. It might be a fun game. It might be essential oils. It might be a great candle. It might be a spreadsheet. It might be a chart. It might be a poster. Who knows what it is? But it'll pertain to their challenges and their desired results, and you can continue to nurture that relationship, and you'll review the client log notes once a week to keep in touch with those hot leads. You want to have a keep in touch marketing strategy for those people that have said, no, not yet, okay? So that's the tip that I want to share with you. When they're still that prospect status, that hot lead status, they haven't yet said yes and they're not a client, okay? Susie asked the question, do these initial notes remain private to you even when the prospect converts? I would worry that they would inadvertently see them somehow. If you click to show, does the old log notes remain private to you? Yeah, the click to show, so whenever you make a new entry, Susie, when you click add new entry, every new entry is specific and unique. So whatever entry you make, when you show log, so if I click show this log and I send the notification and I include it in the email, whatever, and I click save, when Alan becomes a client and logs into the private client website, you'll see this column right here. This is how you don't worry, Susie. This column right here gives you the confidence to know that, okay, when Alan logs in, when Alan becomes a client and he logs into my private client website, he's going to see whatever text I have in this post. But he's not ever going to see this because it's not visible to him. He's not going to see this. It's not visible to him. So it's this column right here and all the log entries that keep you don't have to worry, okay? Robin asked the question, when someone becomes a prospect because they have opted in or scheduled an appointment, do we need to manually change their profile to hot lead after we connect with them? Do they receive something when we do this from our console? Yes, when they're a prospect. So when they opt in, they're a prospect, right? When they book a sample session with you, that's when you manually switch them over to hot lead. And you change their status to hot lead. When you change their status to hot lead, they do not receive anything from you. They don't know anything from you. The only thing that happens is their name, instead of being listed under prospects, is now listed under hot lead. But nothing happens on the prospects end, and you would make that change. Okay, Robin, so you would change that. And where you would change that, so let's say that Alan, let's go back to Alan. So let's say Alan's like, yeah, let's set up that sample session, right? So under the profile for any contact, this is where you'll see the status. And right now the status is prospect, and so I would click the hot lead, and I would just change the status to hot lead. And when I change that status and click save, they'll be listed under the hot leads segment instead, okay? Casey says, what about the name and password? When we change them to a hot lead? Yeah, so when you change them to a hot lead, the hot leads in your contact list require a username and a password. And so it does require, Robin, like in your scenario, when you want somebody to become a hot lead, you click the hot lead, and then you have to create the username, you have to create the password. And so usually their username, I always like to use a formula so it takes no brain power on your part. Usually their username is their email, whatever their email is, right? So you use their email. And then the password is, I always like the formula of their first name or their last name, either one. Let's go with last name. So their last name and the month and the year. So for example, in this case, I would do Preston 01, because it's January, 1/7, which I'm still not used to because of the new year thing, because it's 2017. And that would be the password, because whenever Alan becomes a client and I let him know and I educate him where to go to log in, he can always change his password, right? And so you create that. So that's the easy way to do it. And Robin says, this is a great way to keep track of those who are closer to conversion than just opting in. That's exactly right. And that is the purpose of hot leads. So in this particular case, hot leads, here's 5 people. So I have 983 prospects in this particular training account's contact list. It's a lot of people to keep up with. I don't. I just market to them, I email to them, I send my newsletters to them, I keep in touch with them that way. But these 5 people, they have most recently booked a sample session with me, and they're on the cusp of signing up. These are the people that my attention is going on. I've got my automated marketing keeping in touch with these 983 prospects, but this is where I'm developing relationships. I'm sharing resources, and the client log is a great way to do that. Okay? Okay, several other questions are coming in. Where do you recommend we place clients who are at the end of their coaching agreement and not continuing? And you want to continue to keep them on your newsletter and other ticket lists, inactive or prospects. They go to inactive. If you've ever worked with anybody and they are done, they've graduated because you were such an amazing coach, and they're not going to continue, they go under inactive, because the way you communicate and market to inactives is very different than prospects. Because with prospects, and here's why, Anita, this is a great question and a great distinction. With prospects, there is very little what we call know, like, and trust factor, K-N-O-W. They kind of know you, they kind of like you, and they kind of trust you when they're on your list. And as you send out your newsletters regularly, as you send out other content-based emails and education-based emails, it builds, it nurtures them, and it builds that know, like, and trust factor. But it's like they're dipping their toe in until they're sure about you, what you offer, and when they're ready. However, with inactive clients, the know, like, and trust factor runs very deep. They have worked with you. You know them inside and out. There is a level of transparency. They know more about you personally as well, and the coaching interaction back and forth. So there is a much deeper know, like, and trust factor with inactive clients, more so than anybody on your list. And as a result, you can market to them and communicate with them in a much deeper, more authentic, sometimes more badass or more direct or more blunt way, because you know they know you and you know them and they get it, where prospects may not get it, and you might piss people off and they might unsubscribe from your list, right? So you can be a little more direct with your former clients than you can with prospects, because that know, like, and trust factor is a lot deeper, right? So if anybody ever finishes a coaching agreement with you and they don't continue, then you can move them to inactive status. The other reason I love this, I'm going to give you another little insight in marketing to inactives. Your inactive contact list is a source of your next clients. Here's what I mean by that. A lot of people think, a lot of coaches think, oh, I worked with Sally 2 years ago. We worked together for 6 months and she was complete and she was done. So off she goes and I'll never hear from her again, which is so not true, because life comes in cycles. Sally may have been done then, but over the course of 2 years, shit may have happened and she might find herself in a new place where she's stuck with different information. And when you can keep in touch with her and stay top of mind with her, she's like, you know what? Robin helped me the last time. I bet she can help me with this. Let me talk to her about this new situation XYZ that I'm stuck on. And so once a quarter, at the very minimum, once a quarter, to reach out to your former clients and to just, I call it having virtual coffee and saying, hey, I miss our time together. How are you doing? I'd love to hear some of your greatest and latest celebrations that's going on in your life. Like, tell me what's up. And that door opening right there, well, first of all, you want to know, because you love your clients, right? They wouldn't be clients if you didn't love them. And so it's just fun to find out where they are and where they've come. And that might be it. That might be all you get from them. And there are those that are like, here's my celebrations. And you know what? I'm stuck on this. And all of a sudden that door opener is there and you're like, hey, let's have another sample session. Let's talk through that to see, maybe coaching's a tool for you. Maybe it's not, but let's check it out. And you can open up that door for a dialogue. So you always want to keep them organized in that inactive status so that you can communicate and follow up with them that way. Okay. All right. Let's see. Thomas has a clarifying question. So a prospect does not have a client portal, but you can still send them info. The prospect cannot log into your private client portal. They can just receive communications from you, Thomas. So they newsletters, you can send them autoresponders. You can send them information, but they cannot log in to a portal and retrieve or see any information, okay? Svea asked a question when we're talking about creating contacts. She says, do you use the same method to create a prospect when people contact via another channel like LinkedIn or Facebook, so they don't opt in? They may not even be aware of my profile. Svea, whenever anybody opts in or whenever anybody becomes a prospect, I do one of two things. If, like, let's say I'm on LinkedIn or I connect with somebody on Facebook or something like that, or at a networking group, right? Not my free gift on my website, but any of those other places. So let's say I'm at a networking event and I'm telling them about, the challenges I help people with, the results I help people, the services I offer, the free gift I have, and they're like, wow, I want to know more. I say, do you mind if I add you to my mailing list so I can send you this free gift? Because you're going to really like it. And so then I come back and I add them as a prospect on my free gift. What I actually do is I opt them in. I go to my website and I enter the name and email they gave me so they get my autoresponders. So I opt them in. So if I'm having a conversation with somebody, Svea, I ask them if that's okay if I do that for them. And then I go to my website and I enter their name and email and I click the opt-in button. Now, if anything else, what I highly recommend is that if you're posting stuff on LinkedIn, like on your LinkedIn profile or things like that, you always want to direct people to your opt-in page where your free gift lives. and invite them to, that you want to send them this free gift, and to get the free gift, go here and enter your name and email, and this free gift will be sent to you. So you want to send people there as much as possible, okay? Thomas says, where do you put people you meet at networking events? They're prospects. They're prospects. The other thing I do is I also filter by group. So I might have BNI networking group X, Y, and Z, or business building after hours, or I might go to a special presentation where I'm networking there. And so not only do I put them as a prospect, Thomas, and let's say Alan, he's a prospect, let's say I'm at a networking event, I'm going to scroll down, and at the very bottom, hang on a second, at the very bottom, I'm going to see the groups I've created to further segment my contact list. And I'm going to say, okay, this person I know from this particular networking group, networking event that I went to. That way I can, if I met 30 people at that networking event, they'll all be organized in that group, and I can communicate with them. And I know that. I know not only are they a prospect, but I know them from this particular way, okay? Svea asks a clarifying question. These are great questions, guys. Svea says, regarding prospects, if they cannot access the private client portal, what happens if we send out a newsletter with a hyperlink in that newsletter to a document or form that lives in the client portal? I assume they cannot then access it. If you're sending out your newsletter, because your newsletter goes to your entire list, Svea, right? And the purpose of your newsletter is marketing, mainly to prospects, because that's where we keep in touch, and that's where we keep people engaged until they become a client. And so if you need to send them to a document or a form, you want to make sure that's public. So in your console system, you can have both private forms and documents that only clients, when they log into your private client portal, can see, but you can also have public forms. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to click over here to the website tab. Let me clear out of this. And let's take forms. So let's say there's a form that you've created, and whatever it's this, let's say it's called, let's just say it's called the survey. So you're creating this form, whatever this form is. You've got the form name and the description. You've got the questions, and whatever questions, please tell me ABC, whatever. So you've got your questions, there it is. And then the third step of any form or document you create, when you create this, you'll see the form permissions. And under the permissions, you'll see this is available for public access, or this is available for private access. When you mark a form as available for private access, that means that they have to be an active client or a hot lead, somebody with a username and password, an active client or a hot lead. And when they go to your private client website, they can log in with that username and password, and they see what you've given them permission to see, which would be this private form. So it may be that if you have a private, like your goals form, for example, you're just going to have your active clients access that, nobody else. Like when your clients log in, they'll see that form and they'll complete it, right? So your active clients can fill that out. Now, if you're going to be sending out a form or a document in your newsletter, and the majority of the people that are going to be responding to this are prospects, and they can't log into your private client website, you want it to be available for public access. And anyone visiting a web page where this form lives will be able to see this form. And in order for them to complete the form, they will have to, at the very least, submit their first name and their email. And the reason that we say this is in the event, like Svea, let's say you send out a newsletter, and in that newsletter you're sending people to your form. Let's say John on your list is like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. My friend Erica needs to know about this, but Erica's not on your list. So John forwards your newsletter to his friend Erica, and she's like, wow, this is amazing. You want to make sure that Erica gets on your list for seeing this form and this information. So it's going to prompt Erica to enter her first name and last and email at the very least. So now as people share your cool resources and information, you can also grow your list. So you can have stuff available for public access. All right? So Sophia, if you, and anybody, if you ever include anything where you're sending people documents or forms in your newsletter, make sure they're available for public access or they won't be able to access. It'll prompt them to log in and your prospects will be like, I don't know how to log in. What's a login? And they won't have any clue what's going on. Okay. Okay. Let's see. There's several questions. I'm going to back up because there were some questions early on that I want to make sure we don't overlook. Let me see. Hang on a second. Hold on. Let me just sort through these because you guys got some great, great questions. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It's coming. Svea asked another question earlier. Please comment on optimal use of client log versus email and communication versus client session notes. Okay, so let's go back to the client log. So here we are. We're in the client log. And let's go to an active client because that's what she's comparing. So here we are with Helen Ramsey. As always, good old Helen Ramsey. And so Svea wants to know, she wants some information and insight on how to use the client log versus email and communication versus client session notes. So there's 3 ways that you can communicate with clients in your console system. There's the client log, there's a straight up email, and there's the client session notes. So let's start with the client session notes. So every one of your clients, actually all contacts have this, but we'll talk about it with active clients. Under the appointments file for every one of your clients, this is where any appointment they have with you, whether it's an individual session or maybe they're part of a group appointment with you, is listed here. So let's say that, let's talk about this particular private coaching session that this client has. Every one of your appointments has this little piece of paper icon for session notes. And when you click on this as a coach, and if this is my client, when I click on this, this is about this particular coaching session that was on December 15th. And when the client submits their answers for a call strategy, I would see these here as the coach so I could review for the session. I can take my private notes here, my remarks, observations, comments, things like that. I can enter that here. And then after the session, these are the session notes that I can email to the client. Now, the best practice that we teach is to submit the post-session recap form, right? That's the prompting that we want people to do, that we teach after every session. Now, a lot of coaches will also do a recap, and they will list ahas that the client had, or what we call favorite frames, right? They might list commitments that the client made. Whatever homework they said that they would commit to, or action items that they said they would complete, right? So sometimes coaches like to include that. So you can list that here as well, and you can say session follow-up notes for 12-15 session. You might even put another keyword or phrase pertaining to the topic of that, right? So this is a specific session follow-up notes. And when I click save, why I like to use this after my coaching session is because when I look at my appointments for my client, right, here's all my client appointments, I can quickly say, okay, there was something that she did on that appointment. I'm remembering what it was. There was some commitment that she made and something that we talked about. Let me go look at that. And when I click on that session notes, I can quickly see the call strategy. I can see what are my remarks and observations, and I can see what else I may have included in the follow-up after each session. So it just makes it a super easy way for me to locate something specific to a session. The other reason that I love doing information after a particular session on the session follow-up notes, because as a coach, I'm sure this has happened to you, it happens to me all the time, I'm like, you know what? There were several sessions ago, my client and I, we were talking about such and such, and where was that? And I can't remember the date, And so my favorite button is the View All Notes, because as a coach, I can quickly click this. It's one running document of all notes collected, any call strategies my client has submitted, any notes I've made about any session, any follow-up notes I've made after any session, and I can see all of that in one place. So I love that form. So I can scroll through it and quickly find things that pertain to that session, right? So anything relating to a specific session, I like to keep it in the session notes around that particular session, okay? Now, the other thing that you talked about was the client log. So we talked about the client log, and in the client log, we've already looked at that. I'm not going to go through that again, but in the client log, that's in between the sessions, right? So in between the sessions, if there's a prompting or an article or something outside of the coaching session, in between our meetings, that's when the client log is optimal to use that. So the appointments, the session notes, so that you can relate it to a specific session. The client log is everything in between sessions. The emails, I reserve the emails for any blanket communication that I need to do to all of my clients. It's rare that I will send my client, that I will go into Communicate and send my client an email, just a straight up email. If I'm going to communicate with my client, chances are it's outside of the coaching session, which means I'm going to use the client log. And really the only time I'm going to send an email is if I have a broadcast or an announcement or a global resource that I want to share with all clients across the board, then I would send an email, okay? So that's the distinction. Svea, that's the distinction I make with that, okay? Oh, and Casey just prompted, thank you for this reminding, Casey. Where does the session recording go? I always, I like to do it a couple of ways, because I like to put it in the client log, because in between the sessions, the clients like to go back and access the recordings. I like to put it in the client log so that it's secured. The session notes, it's an email that goes out to my client after each session. The recordings, I want to keep them confidential and secure. So I post the recording to a session inside the client log. And it's also nice because when my client then logs in and they scroll and they're looking through the archive, they can just scroll down the page and they will see all the recordings listed in one place. So it makes it easy for my clients to access those recordings and get their hands on it, okay? All right, everybody, I want to be mindful of everybody's time. I know we're just a few minutes over. There are a handful of questions that I did not get to. So if I did not get to your question, well, there's a lot of great questions today. But if I didn't get to your question, take your question and post it on the Facebook group. And myself or Kate or a member of our support team, our VAs hang out there, some of our coaches hang out there. But go there and somebody on our team will make sure to get your question answered. So thank you, everybody, for an amazing topic. We'll be back again next week. We do this every week. And remember that after every Tuesdays at 2, we always archive in the support center. We always archive all of these calls so that if you ever need to go back and listen to them, when you click on Tuesdays at 2, you'll see the archive trainings there, and we archive them. So if you ever can't join us, we miss you, but we'll understand. Or if you need to go back and revisit them, we always post these here. Give us about 24 hours to do that. So thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we will see you next year for another great feature that we'll spotlight. All right, bye for now.